Okay, are we live? Yeah, looks like we are streaming. Hey folks, welcome back. It's time for another episode of Extemporaneous with Estrebillo. That's a working title. Maybe we'll come up with something better. Regardless, what I want to talk about today is source evaluation, especially in the context of fitness, and we're also going to talk a little bit about the Steelman concept towards the end. Let's go ahead and dive into it. I want to first talk about this comment I received. This was the crux and inspiration for today's Extemporaneous talk. I'm just going to leave it on screen there. We're going to call my friend JB here. I don't want to give out his actual name. Now, he's not a public figure, so why would I do that to him? Regardless, what you'll see here, he's been enjoying the programming series, but he made one key comment here that I think is worth discussing, and that is on the next one here, conventional wisdom. So on paper, I completely understand this decision. However, it seems to fly in the face of conventional wisdom for longer femur lifters. Low bar, wider stance, and shoving out the knees. And what he's referring to here, in case you couldn't read the previous slide quick enough, is in my programming video series, I've discussed how I'm actually using a high bar squat as my primary squat variation versus a low bar squat. And because of how I'm built, especially with my long femurs, I have very much a deadlifter's build. A low bar squat would allow me to move more weight, yes, because a low bar squat looks more like a deadlift due to the forward lean, the knees out, the angles, position and torso, all that just looks more like a deadlift as opposed to a true squat. Whereas a high bar squat is a much more difficult position for me to take. If you've been watching me on Instagram, you know my high bar squat, it looks like most people's low bar squat, if we're being honest, because I do have a certain degree of forward lean no matter what I do due to those long femurs. I've been working a lot of torso rigidity to help prevent caving forward. It has helped, but regardless, that's how a squat is going to look for me no matter what I do. Now, with that being said, let's talk about why this is the conventional wisdom for someone built like me when it comes to squatting. Where this nugget comes from is powerlifting. And powerlifting itself is concerned with the 1 rep max above all else, right? It's just how much weight can you put up on the platform across the 3 lifts. That's the crux of powerlifting. That is the sport of powerlifting. Your developmental stuff, the stuff that's going to build more muscle, help you acquire better positions and retain those positions under load, that comes from variations and accessories. So for someone like myself, if I were a true dedicated powerlifter, I'd use the low bar squat as my primary variation, and then I'd likely use the high bar squat as a supplemental movement and other exercises therein. However, for my application and how I train, I treat my squat like a glorified accessory. For me personally, I would rather high bar squat 495, that's the big goal by the way, than low bar squat 545 at this point in the game. And the reason I say that is for me right now, with how things are going, when I low bar squat, I get so much discomfort in my elbow, shoulders, and low back that both my bench and deadlift suffer proportionately greater than how much more I add to my squat. So let's say I add 50 pounds to my squat by switching to high bar, I will likely lose at least 20 pounds on my bench, and I will lose 50 or more on my deadlift in the same day. So as a result of that, it's a net loss for me to use the low bar squat. Now, if I were to spend more time training with the low bar, I might be able to better tolerate that position. But ultimately, too, as I alluded to in my last live, I'm miserable low bar squatting. And for me at this point in the game with what I'm doing in my own training, the juice is not worth the squeeze. I'm better off just using the high bar because I work harder, I have more fun, I'm more consistent, I enjoy my training more, so it creates a nice little positive feedback loop, right? Now, with that, it dives even deeper because really, ultimately, all advice comes through context of the person giving the advice. If I walked up to a bodybuilder, a powerlifter, an Olympic weightlifter, and a strongman, and I asked them all, hey, how should you squat? They're all going to give me a slightly different answer. And even if I asked 5 bodybuilders what kind of squat I should be doing, or 5 powerlifters, or 5 weightlifters, or 5 strongman athletes what kind of squat I should be doing, they're all going to give me a different answer. So, that's what we got 1, 2, 3, 4 sports, 5 different, that's 20 potential different answers I'm going to get based on who I'm talking to. Because with each of them too, like for the strongman athletes, they're going to give me a different answer based on their own anthropometry, how they're put together, as well as their strengths and weaknesses, right? Someone who has shorter femurs, they're going to have an easier time high bar squatting because they don't have as much horizontal hip knee displacement in their squat. Whereas someone with long femurs, they're probably going to advocate for more of a low bar style squat. The Olympic weightlifter is probably going to tell me to do either front squats or high bar back squats, especially, ATG, because that's their recovery position in the clean, the snatch, etc., etc. The bodybuilder might tell me pendulum squats. They might tell me hack squats. They might tell me narrow stance. Whereas the strongman guy, he might tell me a Zercher squat if I'm looking to improve my stone loading, which, by the way, Zerchers are awesome. You should do them. It's important that any time we get advice or guidance from someone that we understand it through the lens of that person giving us the advice. No one is immune to this. We all give and receive advice based on our lived experiences and observations. That's why, as much of a meme as it is to say, it depends. It really is a good answer because so much of what the right answer is for you depends on the given moment. So my key notes with today's little extemporaneous talk is always consider the source that you're getting the information from, as well as their implicit as well as explicit biases, because we're all guilty of it. Recognize every single one of us has blind spots in how we break things down and look at them. That's why it's good to get information from multiple sources. With that said, when you're taking advice or criticism from somebody, you should really try to focus on taking or receiving it from people from whom you would either trade places with them or they have coached others to a point that you would trade places with that person. So for example, let's say that Bob tells me I should only be doing low bar squats, but it turns out that I bench Bob's low bar squat. I'm probably not going to listen to his advice. However, if it turns out that Bob has someone benching my deadlift, I might turn right around and ask Bob about bench press advice because he's taken someone to a position that I would trade places with that person. And then this is just a personal one here. The people who are the most helpful, who generally have the best advice, they're not the ones who are going to go out of their way to say, find your Instagram page and talk trash in your comment section. They're probably busy just focusing on their own things. And it's been my experience, a lot of the strongest, most accomplished people out there, if you just send them a polite DM and ask a question, most of the time, they'll answer a few questions for you, which is really nice. I think that's what's so great about the training world is I've been able to pick the brains of some of the greatest minds out there. And it just makes for a really good time. And so, the last thing I want to talk about is even if you do disagree with the person giving you advice or critique, despite the fact that you would trade places with them, think about making the strongest possible argument for what they're saying rather than just ignoring them outright. And the reason why you want to do that is you just might learn something. This is called the steel man concept. A lot of us are familiar with straw manning, which is where you intentionally misrepresent what your opponent is saying and argue against a weaker iteration of it. Steel man, gosh, see, I'm just so one-track minded, right? Yes, this is how you know it's live, by the way. But steel man is the idea that you make the strongest possible argument on behalf of your opponent and then argue against that iteration. Because if you can beat that version of what they're arguing for, then you know you have it right. And actually, for myself, funny enough, steel man is how I wound up training conjugate and falling in love with the system, and then slowly, over the years, kind of finding my own path and iteration using some of the principles therein. But hey, that's a video for another time, maybe another extemporaneous one. Let me know in the comments section. And if you found this useful, let me know. Hope you folks are having a great day and an awesome weekend. I'll see you next time.